when people look at me and they're just like, wow, you have your spine fused? I can't believe that. Well, I went on to squat 600, deadlift 650, and still bench 370 pounds or close to it 2 years after my back surgery.
You said you're looking at the biggest failure in life.
Life is going to hand you a hard deck of cards sometimes, but you can't control anything besides your attitude and how you approach playing that hand.
You're listening to the All In Wellness Approach podcast.
This is your wellness, your life. So just one question.
Are you ready to go all in?
What's up, A1 Nation? It's Aubrey, and today our guest is from Norton, Massachusetts. But first, I need to set the scene for his pedigree. So, here we go. Powerlifting. 2-time state champion, 3-time regional champion, 5-time national champion. Then turned into an athletic scholarship at Angelo State University, where he got a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. He interned then at Harvard University for strength and conditioning, became a graduate assistant at Eastern Michigan University, completed his master's in exercise physiology, which then turned into strength and conditioning for the Buffalo Bills in the summer of 2015. Then head strength coach, Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas, which is where we are today. He is the co-owner of TrueFit Georgetown, father of 2 perfect angel baby dash hounds, and husband of our very own co-host, Amanda. Everyone, please welcome John Norcott to the show.
Well, thank you for the introductory.
This morning at breakfast, when I was talking to you about this pedigree, I asked you what you thought about your litany of accomplishments, and what was your response?
No, it's nothing special.
You said you're looking at the biggest failure in life.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. A lot of those things that you talked about, like I failed at one point in time. Maybe not right at the beginning of them, but at some point I failed at some of those things. When I started my whole career, it really only started in the gym. Everything that I have today, up to this point in time, is because of my dedication to training, fitness, strength and conditioning. And when I started this journey, I distinctly remember having my brother take me to the gym when I was in 7th or 8th grade. And it was just classic biceps, triceps, chest, abs. I think that's what every teenage boy just thinks matters, right? And my brother went off to college. He's 4 years older. And I got hooked on with my buddy, my best friend growing up. We would go to the gym with his dad. It was very simple. His dad was not necessarily stern, but he said, hey, you're going to do 5 sets of 10 on everything. All right, we just did classic bodybuilding splits, like upper body day, chest, arm day, leg day, things along those lines. Very efficient for people who are 13, 14, 15 years old. I just got bit by the iron bug. I think that's when I realized I'm addicted. I have an addictive personality. I didn't know that's what they called it. I was just very addicted. Like, that was it. And because of that, I failed at grades. That's how I escaped a lot of things in my life as teenagers, they do, right? They escape certain aspects in their life and they tune in on certain areas, and mine was the gym. But I distinctly remember my freshman year going to what we had captain's practices, and I was just a freshman. And I was very intimidated by all these seniors, and I said, I'm going to be the leading scorer in Norton High School history, like as far as yards. So I'm going to be the rushing leader in football because I was a running back. And my friends laughed at me. They literally just laughed and said, not a chance. Well, soon enough, I trained hard. I, continued to really push my envelope for what I could do. And when I left high school, I was the all-time leading rusher, and I had my name on a banner. So that was success. And over the course of that time there, I fell into powerlifting. A friend talked to me about, why don't you get into powerlifting? Because I always seemed to be stronger than all my friends on the team, and even kids above me. And so I got into powerlifting as a junior in high school. From that point in time, I didn't know failure, because my first meet ever was the Massachusetts State High School Championships in 2006. I won that. 2 months later, it was New England Regionals. I won that. A month after that, it was Teen Nationals. I won that. So here I am, my first 3 ever powerlifting competitions, and I set state records and regional records, and then I won a national championship. Okay, that was cool. It was simple. But I wasn't doing anything crazy. Again, 5 sets of 10, 4 sets of 8. I was still doing bodybuilding splits. I had no idea of how to train correctly for powerlifting. And it wasn't until I got into college that a sponsorship through Concrete Creatine came through, and they said, hey, we want to sponsor you. And it was the very first meet. They flew me to Texas. It was Killeen, Texas. And I lost. So I'm like, great, this sponsorship is going to drop me because I lost the first competition. And that was Teen Junior Nationals back in 2008. And then they said, hey, well, we have Raw Nationals next month. And it was the very first ever Raw Nationals. And I won the first ever Raw Nationals. So now at this point in time, I'm a 3-time national champion. And then from there, I went on to win 2 more. But because of concrete creatine and because of my devotion to strength and conditioning, flash forward, now I'm working at a booth in the Arnold Sports Festival 2013 in March. And who walks on by but my future lovely wife. So because of my dedication to the weight room, because of my dedication to try to prove others wrong, because of some failures that I hadn't, but sticking with it, I was able to work at the Arnold Sports Festival for this company that took a shot on me that had no idea who I was. Because of that, I met my future wife. And because of that, my career got a jump start into Eastern Michigan. And from that point in time, rolled into the Buffalo Bills and all those, things that you talked about. And, as we continue to get older and develop and mature, I would look back and like the reason that I have, 2 loving weans, a lovely wife, and a successful business is because of my dedication to have that one steady in my life that was strength and conditioning, fitness, working out.
One of the things I've come to accept and now respect about you is you are one of the very few black and white people in my life. You do not live in a gray area.
Yeah, and that's tough because a lot of the solutions that I work through end up being in gray areas.
I've seen you grow on a personal level as opposed to a physical level living in the gray. Where did the transformation start? Like, what was your first biggest failure where you realized you had to lean into failing in order to succeed?
Geez, I mean, it just depends on like different aspects of my life that I was in at those points in time. If I look back at my collegiate career, my strength and conditioning coach in college at Angelo State, he said, "Hey, look, you got to get your NSCA certification by the time you graduate, or when you graduate, you should be studying for it and get it done right away." Didn't take that advice. Flash forward, I'm working for the Buffalo Bills. All right, that's a very, very rare opportunity. I'm not like a full-time guy for them. Okay. I want to just make that very clear. So I got the chance to work under Coach Eric Ciano and his staff, and I'm very fortunate to do that. And because of that, I was like, oh, we gotta be set. If I do a good job for him, I'll be successful wherever I go next. Well, when you still don't have that certification, because it's not really necessarily required when you're a grad assistant, they expect you to be working for that. And I didn't take that very seriously. I just thought, oh, if I work hard for these people, they'll help me get to the next spot. They will until the legality part of like, hey, you need to be certified to actually do this. Because of that opportunity that I missed, I was able to still maintain a position at Wofford College. Loved Wofford. Learned a lot from my boss there about how to and how not to train athletes, but I was still not nationally certified. It was another paid assistant part-time position. Don't really need a certification for that because you're under the tutelage of your boss. And then from there, I was able to get my first full-time strength and conditioning job at Wayne State. I had a Olympic certification at that point in time that I maintained while I was at Wofford, and they said, "Hey, look, you can get this job, but you have to have this certification." I was like, "Okay, cool." Well, after a year, I still didn't have it, and then they said, "Hey, you need to get it by this date, or you're terminated." So that's me sort of failing upwards, I guess, because I was able to naturally like grow from intern to paid assistant to full-time guy. But at the same point in time, I could have failed, you know, less or proceeded to go in advanced stages if I were to have my NSCA certification right away when my first initial strength coach back in 2011 told me to do that. I definitely look back, there was missed opportunities there.
Was there anything in your entire life with that entire pedigree that you've ever quit at?
Yeah, so quitting's never really a thing for me. And, I go back to this day. I was a Boy Scout kid, and I told my mom like, "Hey, I want to quit Boy Scouts." And she said, "Well, we're gonna wait till the season's over. I'm not gonna let you quit." When you're a kid, you're like, "Okay, cool." But looking back, it's like my mom never allowed me to quit. My parents never allowed me to quit. I mean, I'm talking about my mom, and she walked 6 miles to work at McDonald's. She always had odd end jobs. She would work nights at Roach Brothers as a baker, things like that. And my dad, he had a very steady job, but he never missed a game. Get off the train, literally running to his car to get out and get to, sporting events. So I was very fortunate to be around, my mom and dad who were hardworking people. They never allowed me to quit, but there were certainly times along the way where I wanted to quit. It's just one of those things where you got to seek it through, because at the end of it, whether you decide to quit, which I don't think a lot of people should do, you're going to learn. And learning one way or another, whether you learn how to or how not to, you've learned. I've been very fortunate to work for many strength coaches over the course of my career. A handful of them are actually master strength coaches, which is the highest level you can achieve in strength and conditioning. There are some coaches that I did not enjoy working for, like at all. But because I worked for them, I learned how to not train athletes, how to not manage a staff. I learned how I felt when they were talking to me, and I learned how I wanted to try and avoid feelings like that for other people in the future. You deal with certain aspects of where you're at, and you try to manipulate your mindset to have growth from those.
Going back to the certification that your peers were telling you to get, why the hesitation? Why did you avoid that recommendation?
Yeah, I was broke as a joke. I didn't understand the value of savings. You talked about me going to a junior college, right? I went to a junior college because I failed at my grades, but I was so focused on strength and conditioning and training. But then when I got to my junior college, that was me, wake up call. Hey, get your crap together. Because if you want to play next level ball, guess where it's not happening? Here in Massachusetts at this junior college. So when I actually got to Dean, I got my GPA from a 2.1 up to a 3.7. From there, I was able to get a scholarship down to Angelo State. But when I was at Angelo State, I graduated with a 3.0. I learned the value in that. And I looked at this certification. I was like, oh, cool. I learned all this stuff in school. I don't really need to study much. So when I actually studied and tried to take it my first time, failed. I was like, oh, okay. Took it again, failed. So yeah, I took that test 3 or 4 times. I think it was the fourth time where they were like threatening to fire me at Wayne State. And you can ask Amanda, every time I've studied for this, I did something. I need to do the opposite because it's not working, right? It's sort of like when you go and work out or when you train. You work out, you do the stuff that you enjoy and love, but when you train, you work on the stuff that you're not necessarily good at, that you have to do because you need to get better at it. I needed to train into studying. So I read the book literally 3 times, front to back. I started at chapter 1, ended at chapter 21, then started chapter 21, ended at chapter 1. And that was a separating factor for me. I passed with flying colors. Why didn't I just do that the entire time? Where would my whole career have gone? Maybe because I didn't do it. That's how I met Amanda, right?
Mhm.
So who knows? I could have been a completely different path in life if I did pass it earlier on.
So far in all of these little segue stories, I've not once heard an excuse from you.
There are certainly things in life that come out of left field, right? That you could use an excuse. And by all means, they are an excuse for something, right? But at the same point in time, it's the mindset and approach of how you take these excuses and what do you do with it. In football, you run plays. Plays don't always work out how they want. You know what you got to do the next play? Do another one. So you sort of have to have short-term memory, but then just move on. And if you get hit in the head enough, you try to forget about what previously happened. So I don't know. I think playing sports is an important thing for a lot of people too. I'm not saying every human should ever play a sport, but they should at least attempt it. I think young kids need to learn how to fail. I've learned a lot, and I've also failed a lot after we've been talking about it. And when I was training for arena football, I was training in this private sector, this guy, and he owned this facility, and he had a coach who was coaching me. I just love that stuff. And I'm like, hey, so where'd you go to school? What'd you do? He's like, I'm actually an intern at Harvard right now on the side as well. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so when I went and played arena football and got done with that, I reached out to him and he said, hey, yeah, I could try and see if you can have an interview with Harvard for their strength and conditioning internship that I went through. I got it, and I was very fortunate to that. You're coming from a kid who played arena football, was a very successful power lifter, and has his degree already, right? A lot of these kids who are in strength and conditioning at that point, where they're still pursuing a degree or just freshly out of school, like haven't really done too much. So I walk in, I'm thinking I'm like King Tut in this compared to all the other interns. And I got humbled real quick. I was very fortunate to have good mentors there, Coach James Frazier and Tim Mullen. And because they made sure every day that I knew where I was on the totem pole, it was a very eye-opening experience. And I distinctly remember talking with Coach Mullen one day, and he said, where do you see yourself going after this? I said, well, I deserve a grad assistant position. He says, deserve? I was like, yeah, what? And he's like, nothing that you do in this profession is going to be deserving. All right. You have to earn it. You need to get to that next level. But the only way you do that is doing a good job here with us. So you need to make it big time here where you're at. As an intern, you're doing all this grunt work. And I was always just constantly making mistakes and getting sort of talked to, scolded, whatever. Again, I think it was just my ego. And he says, look, I don't care what you do. Like, you can make 1,000 mistakes. Just don't make the same mistake 1,000 times. Okay, I guess that makes sense. But you don't really realize what it means until you do it. Sure enough, the next week, I do the same mistake again. He comes out, he's like, didn't we just talk about this? How can I trust you to coach athletes with a program if you can't do it correctly the second time or the third time?
Mhm.
If I always have to be out here watching you or helping you, what good are you, right? If you can't learn one thing and then try to not make the same mistake again and again and again, then you're not going to really make it too far. And that just really stuck with me, making 1,000 different mistakes, but not making the same mistake 1,000 times.
I'm gonna get personal with you here, and you're
Oh boy.
you're used to it. You can choose which way that this story can go because you have complete control of this right now. Fast forward and just say, now you're a gym owner. Something extremely detrimentally pivotal happened to you as I'll say freshly-ish married. I mean, you and Amanda get married, you move down here, get your first home. You basically almost lost the ability to walk, and I want you to share that story if you're ready.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm very fortunate to be in the position I'm at right now, but I think it goes back to some stuff we talked about earlier with mindset and growth and using excuses as sort of like a jumping board to go forward in life, depending on what it is, right? For me, it actually started prior to my whole back situation. I tore my bicep. Keep in mind, like, I've deadlifted 700 plus pounds. At that time, on the side, I was just buying and reselling exercise equipment. Okay. And I had this piece of equipment. I've moved heavier things. And again, I've picked up and moved heavier, awkward things for a long time. And this piece of equipment that I was getting out of the back of a truck just shifted a little bit. And I tried to change my body weight, and then bam, snap. There goes my bicep up into my shoulder. And I thought, did I just tear my bicep? That is a substantial thing. My whole tendon ripped off my bone. Great. So sure enough, I had surgery, right? I was stuck in a sling. I'm not really training at this point in time because I'm in a lot of pain, right? And I'm just going through that. And then, so this is May 2021. And then the next year, here I am. I'm starting to gain momentum. I'm starting to deadlift again. I'm doing all these things. My hand is like not 100%, but it's like 90% comparatively and all that. Like my grip, all that stuff. I'm getting some mass back. I'm starting to gain strength, confidence. And, Amanda and I, we went on a Labor Day weekend getaway. We went jet skiing and we stayed at a, resort. It was a good time. I went into a hot tub, went into a pool, went into a lake, all these things. The next day after jet skiing, my back was like really sore. I'm like, okay, it's probably just from all the, pounding of the waves and all that stuff. And then the day after that, it was more sore. All right, whatever. I remember getting out of bed in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and I put my feet on the ground and I collapsed. Whoa, that's different. But I went about my day. I still got up 4 hours later and I trained. I put my feet up on the bench pressing and doing all these things. And from there, it was just very difficult. Usually I take ibuprofen. By the end of the day, it's better. By the end of the day, it was worse. And so we actually went into the emergency room. From there, they said, hey, you have some shifts in your discs. As that progressed over the course of weeks, it progressively got worse and worse. I was feeling a lot of pain in my shins, like nerve damage, to the point where I'm in a fetal position, rocking back and forth, squeezing my legs, and I'm yelling at Amanda, cut my effing legs off. I'm in that much pain. At this point, they gave me a back brace, and I didn't really connect two and two, but every time I put the back brace on, I felt better. So imagine like my discs are here, and like every time I was standing without a back brace, they were just shifted. But when you corset yourself, it just brought my spine back to a tolerable pain,
Mhm.
right? We're going back to the hospital. And because I couldn't walk, I couldn't get off the couch. It took 4 firefighters and an ambulance to get me to the hospital. And I just remember crying in pain because I couldn't move. It's one of those things where it's life changing, right? This could be an excuse book for sure. They found out that I actually had a staph infection in my spine and it was growing, and they had to do emergency surgery the next day. So usually what happens with something like this, when you have a staph infection and they need to remove it, they'll remove the staph infection and they'll give you months of antibiotics, somewhere between 3 to 5 months, depending on what it is. And then you'll go back in and then they'll fuse your spine. Because my discs and because of how intense this was, were so shifted out of place, I wasn't going to be able to have a healthy lifestyle within those couple of months. I was always going to be in ravishing pain. And the doctor said, hey, we're going to have you have surgery. You're going to have 2 days, and then we're going to have surgery again to fuse your spine. Whatever, just fix me, right? Keep in mind, I can't walk like on my own at all. I'm on a walker, or people are helping me walk at this point in time. So they have the surgery and they initially remove the infection. Then they send it to labs and they find out what type of infection it was. Saturday morning comes around and then they now fuse my spine together. I'm like, okay, great. I have tubes running out my back and I'm in the hospital now. I'm going to be there for about 8 days longer than the other 3 that I've already been there for. Nothing else mattered. Like bills, business, training kids, job, nothing mattered in my head. So looking back, which is quite cynical, there was almost a peace to it. In the moment, I'm in a lot of pain, the most pain I've ever been in my life. And it's life-altering stuff. I think that's what's changed a lot about me, is what's helped me live in this gray area. Nothing but my
You
thoughts.
did not have lifting.
Nope.
You did not have the gym. You did
Nope.
not have
Nothing mattered.
students.
Nothing mattered besides getting better. That was it. Obviously, from that point in time, my life changed. Keep in mind, like, I'm a 650 plus pound squatter, close to 400 pound bencher, and 700 plus pound deadlifter, and I can't walk. All I care about is, like, am I going to lift again? Because the only reason I ever got into this position where I have a wife, where I have this job, where I have this lovely house and these 2 dogs, is because of fitness. So that was a big thing for me. Fast forward, I'm at home, I'm starting to recover, I'm starting to walk. Amanda's been there along the way the entire time, which was great, but it's taking a toll on her. I have a lot of thoughts going on at this point in time because you're just stuck in your thoughts. You're laying in bed all day. Get up and walk 2 or 3 times. That's all I'm doing.
It's hard to be optimistic and positive and motivational for yourself, let alone be a patient for your wife.
Yes. Yes. But it also had me realize all the failures that I was as a husband, which is crazy, because you're like, why would you think negative thoughts? And it's like, well, when you're alone, you can only have so many positive thoughts before you start questioning and looking back at certain areas in your life. So I tried to become a better husband at that point in time. Part of doing that was she was always in my ear about opening a gym. So here I am, I'm at home, and I look at her and I said, let's open a gym. And she's like, now? Now you want to open a gym? I love a Groundhog's Day. And I do, where I can get up and do the same thing over and over and over again, right? And I really don't mind that. But, like, that's why I have Amanda, because she's like, nope, we're not going to have a Groundhog's Day today. We're going to do this. I think that's what's so amazing about having such a strong, independent woman, is not because she's my wife, but, like, you need to have someone who's not necessarily 180-degree opposite of you, but someone who thinks differently, right? If you just have a partner who never tells you no, then you're never going to grow, you're never going to learn, you're never going to fail, and you're never going to adapt. When she's with me training and doing all these things for my back to help me get better, she's helping me fail. I remember distinctly, I can't make it down to the light pole because I'm not there yet when we go for walks. She's been there the whole way, but she's also just, like, challenging me the entire time too. Like, what's your plan? What's this? What's that? What's your life going to look like? Right now, I'm just trying to stand up for 5 minutes. So they are tough conversations, and they have to happen. If you run from the tough stuff, then you're just in comfort zone. You're working out your whole life. And I think people need to train their whole life. Training and working out are 2 different things.
One of our common denominators here on the show that's an undertone, and we try not to ever make it a forefront, but it's a natural and genuine relational thing Amanda and I have, is every time we need an answer to something, we revert to our faith. Our faith biblically, our faith in God. And you now have a pretty strong faith, but that wasn't always the case.
Okay, look, so I grew up in the Northeast. Huge Roman Catholic thing up there, right? Went through the whole, like, Catholic school. So you're used to going to church every Sunday. It's mass. It's the same stuff all the time. I go to college, right? I'm on my own. I'm not going to get up and go to church. But then I go to Texas, and you're dating girls in Texas as a guy. You're new. They love your accent because you're from wicked far away type place. Like, right? I go to church now with Amanda weekly. I never leave church feeling negative. Okay. And as I mature and get older, I think you need to surround yourself with people who are nice, happy, positive, and have a good lookout on things that happen. And try not to make excuses. I find that there are a lot of problem people out there and not a lot of solution people. When you go to church, you don't leave there with more problems. You might have clarity and find a solution while you're sitting there listening, or you might have a different perspective on it, right? So I never leave church feeling bad. The only bad that I feel would be personal about how I treated or talked to somebody, maybe some things I said or did in reflection to my wife and my marriage by the biblical sense. And then I try to get better from that, right? I try not to make the same mistake 1,000 times. I still fail at that stuff too. And it's just like a wake up call. I go to church because I want to hear a good message. And they don't always hit. They're not always home runs with me. Sometimes I go to church and I feel like, I walked, got a single, or whatever it is. But sometimes they're home runs. I'm energized. I'm good. Then like I'm in the right path. I just got to sort of sit, believe, have faith, do all those things, right? And just be patient. Along my lines of failures and peaks and valleys in my career and not listening to others, I just sort of have to have faith. And, my wife saying is have faith, do the work. I was like, well, I can understand that. I respect that. It makes sense. Have faith, do the work. It's very simple and it's very easy if you apply it and actually do the work. Whenever I'm in my head about something like opening a gym, I'm a very safe type person. That's where Amanda comes into play. She's like, nope, we're going to try this. And then we do. We fail and we move on, or we succeed and we continue to move on. But either way, we move on one way or another.
With that picture painted, going back to you staring at the ceiling, you decide then and there, hey,
Yeah.
babe, let's open a gym.
I don't even know what really made me full send on that idea.
Your faith in her.
Yeah, here we are. People don't get was my first month of being home on the bed is like I had a PICC line in my arm. So I had liquid antibiotics running through my arm up into my heart. And I had a nurse come out weekly and check on me and do all that. But daily, I wasn't able to work out. I was only able to shower once. And so every night around, 5 to 7 p.m., she would come, take the PICC line out, wrap my arm out, and help me shower. And then once that was done, she'd put the PICC line back in me, new IV bag, and here we go. And then I'd go to work. I'd be in work at the high school with my back brace, a PICC line going into my heart, and my little IV bag on my side. And, as couples do, they have disagreements or they have tough days. She was having a tough day. I was having a tough day, and she said some stuff, and I'm just standing there in the shower, and, I just start crying. I distinctly remember crying. Here I am, grown man, been through a lot. I'm blaming it on the antibiotics.
700-pound powerlifter,
Yeah,
and
ain't
you're
nothing,
crying in the
right?
shower.
Ain't nothing, right? So it's one of those things, and I'm just sitting there crying, weeping in the shower, and I'm like, what am I really doing that's pouring back into her? Because right now she's not doing much for herself. She's stressed out the wazoo. She's trying to balance maintaining home gym clients. She's trying to balance her job, taking care of dogs. And there are a lot of people in this world that have it way worse. Okay. I'm not comparing those to Amanda at their point in time in her life. But for me, that was a pretty low level for her and probably some of the lowest that I've seen her. And I'm at my lowest.
I knew after the fact that was a low because she shares everything with me. And that's about the time in our friendship where she went radio silent. And typically radio silence means you're working on something great. We let each other have our moments and we always pick up where we leave off. And my heart absolutely shattered when I found out what she was living through by herself because she was barely keeping it together, let alone wanting to even speak life into the hell she was living in.
Yeah, it's a very tough thing to understand. But at the end of the day, I'm sitting here with a podcast that you and her started, and I'm talking about my journey. There are people who don't have that opportunity. And I don't think that's an excuse. That's their lifestyle. So when people look at me and they're just like, wow, you have your spine fused? I can't believe that. Well, I went on to squat 600, deadlift 650, and still bench 370 pounds or close to it 2 years after my back surgery. I didn't let it be an excuse. Okay. There are people out there that don't have the ability to say, this is my excuse. There are people that physically can't, right? And I physically could, and I can, and I did. I think that's the toughest aspect, is when people have something like a setback, whether it be a staph infection in their spine with a spinal fusion or a torn bicep. I think some people are waiting for an excuse to stop doing something instead of using that as a learning curve to really jump forward with it. I think some people just get burnt out. I really do. And I think they're looking for it. And I would just really, really love to tell everybody, yeah, life is going to hand you a hard deck of cards sometimes, but you can't control anything besides your attitude and how you approach playing that hand. Attitude is everything for me. When I had this happen to me, my attitude towards it was just get better. Like I had to just get better, not only for myself, but for my wife. And because if those two things got better, everything else has to get better. My job will get better. My livelihood would get better. My overall health, just in general, outside of lifting. If I never lifted again in my life, my health would have to stay better. I'd have to stay active somehow else. I deal with athletes all the time who've had injuries from like rolled ankles to broken fingers, ACLs, all that stuff. When you get injured, it's not physical. Yeah, it is. On the outside looking in, it's physical. It's mental.
If you were to put a percentage to that,
It's probably about 90-10. So for an example, like Saquon Barkley is probably, again, anyone who's listening, he is a running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. If he were to have my spine surgery, he'd be done. That's it. The way that they do at that level with a fused spine and sort of what I do. Because then you risk legit paralysis. But there's this, was it Damar Hamlin? All right. This guy died on the football field. Died. What was it, 2 or 3 years ago with the Buffalo Bills game? And an athletic trainer helped save his life. And from there, he was back and he was playing the next year. There's just so many different avenues to injuries and mindsets. I think some people use injuries as an excuse to get out of doing things and continuing because they've been burnt out. And athletes also use that as a stepping stone. And it's like, hey, maybe I took this for granted and now I got to have this better. Or maybe I took my strength for granted and maybe this was someone giving me a wake up call like, hey, little staph infection, huh? Little spine fusion, huh? Maybe be better with maybe be a better husband. Maybe listen to your wife a little bit more. I definitely think that because of my spine injury, I live in the gray area a lot more now. I still like to think that there's black and white. I love me a Groundhog's Day, okay? But at the same time, there is definitely a gray area that I float in a lot more than what I used to when I was younger.
when I first met you, you were, and I feel like this is going to offend you, but
Yep,
not maybe.
probably. I was bigger.
You were huge,
Yeah.
intimidatingly huge.
Yeah.
You are obviously still very fit, but your training has changed and you no longer are on the powerlifting circuit. But that has changed with a lot of small steps that have derived from this injury
Correct.
to now doing what?
As you guys probably listened to previous podcasts with Amanda and you guys have talked about HYROX. Here's what people don't understand about HYROX from my perspective. Everyone knows what CrossFit is, and people often think about CrossFit and HYROX being very similar. And they're, for the most part, there's a lot of stuff that might be similar on the outside looking in. But if you're in it, it's a very different thing. For me, I did powerlifting for 20 years. I did 3 things: I squat, I bench, I deadlift. I had 3 attempts at each. I lifted a total of 9 times, even given meet. That's it. There's no running. There's no, by any means, conditioning, but there is a general physical preparation that you have to do because you have to have the ability to lift 9 maximal times or sub-maximal to maximal to potentially even more than what you could potentially do in a given amount of time. Okay. So there is some conditioning to that. It's a lot on your joints. My spine injury and my bicep injury, these never happened because of powerlifting. But powerlifting was always the same. It was squat, it was bench, it was deadlift. I competed in the USA Powerlifting Federation, and it was always the same rules for the most part, and it was always indoors, which was great. HYROX is the same 8 events, and it's always indoors. Now, there are some events that are outdoors and specific ones in certain locations, but about 95% of them are always indoors. So they sort of match. You know what you're doing. You got to master these things. You got to master the squat, master the bench, master the deadlift. You have to master running and then the other 8 events that go along with that. Well, the problem is
You hate running.
oh boy. I was really good at sprinting. I played running back, I played fullback, linebacker. I never really had to run longer than like a 40 yards at any given time. Like, I'm not running distances, okay? Now I have to run a 1K every time, eight times? Like, that's nuts. So now you take an energy system like being strong and powerful and lifting anywhere from 3 to 10 seconds at a given point in time, depending on how the strain and hardship of it all is, right? And now I got to do an event that is an hour, hour and a half. What are we talking about here? For me as a competitor in myself, I love the challenge. So March 2025, I turned 36. I said, I'm going to do HYROX. 3 to 5 years, I'm going to be a pro HYROXer. Even my wife laughed at me. Okay. She was not supportive. She just laughed at me,
Sure.
you know, because she's like, because all she's known is big no neck John doing all this. And now I got to run. She's never even known me as football training, speed training, plyometric training John. She's known me as just washed up football athlete, meathead powerlifter John. She's never seen me run at all. You know, I did my first HYROX in Boston solo. I cramped for like 5 minutes. It was miserable. And then Amanda and I did a doubles, and then just me and my buddy did Phoenixes and doubles. But here's the thing. If you look at my times, it's like, wow, he's failed. But this is one of those things where failure is, you know, and
Failing upward.
it's your own perspective, right? Like, am I failing compared to these other top dudes who are running sub 1 hour HYROXes? Absolutely, I'm failing. If you don't beat yourself, you're never going to beat anybody. If I wanted to get to 2,000 pound total, if I don't beat my 1814 or 1813 that I did and try to get 1825 or 1840, my next one, guess what? I'm not getting closer to a 2,000 pound total. So it doesn't matter who the guys are that are in 1st through 5th or 1st through 9th place. If I don't beat myself, I'm never getting to 9th place. I'm never getting to 8th place. That's what's so alarming about what these sports or hobbies are, is it's you versus you. I am no longer involved in a team sport unless you're working with a partner. And outside of that, HYROX, if you're never just trying to beat yourself, either on a daily or weekly, hourly basis or a competitive basis every other so month, you're never going to beat those guys, girls that you might be trying to chase.
Mhm. Another thing I didn't list in your freaking amazing pedigree is currently you privately train athletes, young athletes, and every single one of your young athletes has been offered a full ride scholarship at one various prestigious university or another. So without naming names and naming universities and all of that, I want to ask you a question that I'm curious for myself. If I was one of your student athletes sitting here to say, Master John, Coach John, teach me in the most simplistic way how to fail upwards. What does that look like?
Okay, so I want to start with what you said. Like, I'm very fortunate that these kids that I've trained have been able to go and have an opportunity to play next level football. That's something that I didn't take advantage of at my for myself, because I didn't put towards the grades. I got denied by 12 colleges
Mhm.
to just get in. So if you don't get into a college, it doesn't matter how good you are at a sport. So I want to congratulate these kids, you know, and like I said, not naming names of universities, it starts with a good parenting household. It also starts with those kids being coachable. And a lot of these kids, some have preferred walk-ons at Division I universities right now, but they have academic scholarship with it. Some of these kids have academic and athletic scholarships at some Division II schools. And then some of these kids have academics at Division III schools and are guaranteed a spot. And then others have NIL deals at Power Fours. All right, so a little bit of everything in between. Just like how I coached at every level between high school and NFL at some point in time, these kids I train are also at that same level too, Division III to Power Four, which is very, very awesome. But I really don't take any credit for their genetic potential. They have a great family household, good support there. They're smart kids. Every one of them have academic scholarships, not just athletics. And then also, I view myself as an extension of parents and also try to be a mentor for these kids. A lot of these kids don't understand that, their parents are their first coaches. A lot of kids don't have two-parent households. Some kids don't have any parents in their house. They have a guardian of some sort. And I think as long as you continue to support them, they're going to try to be successful one way or another. So I don't ever try to take credit for these kids at the levels that they get to, because I know for a fact that they've earned it by putting in work. But they did that through failing. They failed at some point in time, whether they lost a game, whether they missed a rep, whether they bailed on something in the weight room. Like, there's overcoming adversities. That could be failing a test and then doing better on the next ones. All right. That could be not listening to me when I try to mentor them and tell them about something. Because I don't just talk about A to B lifting. It's not any of that. It's like, hey, how are grades doing? Hey, we talk about, girls and things like that, and how they may or may not be a distraction for them as they get older in their high school careers. These are real things that kids deal with. And then also, these kids deal with long days, early morning practices here in Texas before school. So these kids are at school starting their day around 6 or 7 or so. And then they train in their sport in season until their first period athletics. And then they work through that. So then they get done. And then they get right into school, lunchtime, and then school finishes. And then they have either weight training at the end or more football practices.
Or
and
games.
Or games,
Yeah.
right? And then they come home. So now put yourself as an adult with their schedule. Now, try to have a 14 to 18-year-old mindset. Are you going to hydrate all the time? Are you going to eat all the time? Are you going to get proper sleep? Are you going to try and have a social life? Right? The answers are hell no, right? It's almost impossible. But that's where support from the parents, that's where support and mentorship from someone like me or their sport coaches come into play. And that's where a lot of coaches need to check their egos. So in order to continue to fail upwards, they have to go through some hardships of, not eating correctly, not sleeping correctly. These are minuscule like things in comparative to missing out on a job because of something that was bigger and detrimental. That's a big fail, right? These kids, they fail all the time. They may or may not realize it, and they just learn from those mistakes. But I think a failing upwards thing would be to maybe view yourself as something better than what you are. And then you get hit in the face really hard. And then you get knocked down a peg. And then you have to overcome that. These kids need to fail so many different ways, whether it be academically, physically with training, or on a game. It's a stepping stone. So it's not necessarily one specific thing that I can say that would help them fail them upwards. It's a combination of all those things. Because I didn't listen to my mentor as a strength coach in college who said, hey, you need to get your certification early. Here I am. But at the same time, maybe if I did get my certification early, it might not have led me to Amanda, right? But I know for a fact that if I gave up on strength and conditioning at an early age, it was definitely not going to lead me to be sitting in this room with you ladies. So there's things that you should fail at and learn from, and then there's definitely things that you shouldn't quit. And I think if these kids were to just give up, obviously they wouldn't be in the position that they're in now. So I'm very fortunate that they didn't quit, that they went through hardship, and that because of that, they were able to listen and fail upwards to achieve their goal of next level football.
The common denominator that I hear that I've personally never paid attention to in what you had just said is defining your adversity, defining where that failing point or that weak point in your situation is. And once you can actually define and speak truth into that weak point, it almost gives you clarity on, okay, here's the problem. Now I need to start creating the next steps for the solution.
Yep.
And that's where the growth, and that is really the secret sauce to doing what we're talking about, is failing upward.
Yeah, and for me, I can break it down even smaller. Whenever I was trying to increase my strength for a squat, this is where working out and training come into play. When you train, you have to work the weakness of your areas. So if I knew that my squat was weak from the bottom, why is my squat weak from the bottom? I have to look at many factors, and then I have to build a plan to attack my assistant exercises to help my squat coming from the bottom. And over time, if I stay consistent with that, it'll help increase my squat. Same exact approach for anything that we do in life. If you have something that starts and it changes, all right, nothing is going to be consistent as far as like continuous growth and development, and nothing you have to work for is easy. The consistency in my strength conditioning training has led me to this point in time. But there were many peaks and many valleys and many injuries along the way that got me here. But it was an upward going, right? And so those adversities that you go through, those can't define who you are. You have to learn from those and go back. When I was trying to increase my squat max, I would increase my squat max. And then I would just be like, okay, this is what I got to do. And you know what happens? Squat would go down or it wouldn't go up. What would I have to do? I'd have to adjust. And I'd have to train on something else harder, right?
You had a peer there to remind you, hold you accountable, right?
Not all the time. In my, powerlifting career, I started in 2016. I didn't get a coach until 2006. I didn't get a coach until 2016. So for me, I did a lot of failing and learning on my own until I felt like I was ready to really make that next step. Flash forward to HYROX. I could easily have tried to hire a coach and listen to them and do all that, but I loved this past year because it was so challenging for me. Not just business wise and, building, continuing to build a relationship with my wife, but like just, I'm talking like selfishly, me, myself, and HYROX. It was a huge learning curve. I had to get out and do a lot of things that I didn't want to do, and I learned along the way. And because of that, I had an opportunity to talk to one of the top dogs in HYROX at a meet, and he gave me some advice. He has a giant coaching platform, and I reached out to their coaching platform and whatever, and I looked at some general coaching programs that they got there and all that stuff. And I was like, do I want to coach now? And it's like, nope, John, you're not there yet. You need to still fail. I think that's it. I think people are just so afraid of failure and so afraid of taking a next step by themselves and learning from themselves that they want to get almost not necessarily handouts, but something that's proven to work. And then like, I don't have to work for it,
The quick fix.
right? If I sit here and hire a coach, I'm going to put a lot of weight on that coach and hey, you better make me better. And what if I don't get better? What am I going to do? I'm going to point fingers at that coach. Like, you didn't make me better. And the coach is going to be like, well, you didn't really always listen to me. Your sleep wasn't as good. Your hydration wasn't good. Right. But like, that's what, that's what Amanda and I do as a gym. And we provide a lot of tools for a lot of people. And for me, with HYROX, if I want to provide all these tools for myself, I have to gather my own tools first. I don't want a guy to just give me the tools and then I build a house in 2 years when I could have built a house in 6 months if I just used the right tools. But I have to learn how to fail on my own. He gave me the perfect tools potentially, but like I'm not using them right.
One of your athletes that I'm friends with, just recently, we were talking about her wanting to compete at the women's national powerlifting division. And something that you said in coaching her had stuck with her in terms of her basically walking this fence. She wants to lift and train with you, but then she still wanted to kind of have her cake and eat it too. So what did you tell her?
And it's a delicate balance, especially a male compared to a female and how they may or may not look at their body, right? So I'm not going to sit here and speak for a female and her body. But here's what I'm going to do and talk about my body and how it's transitioned from powerlifting to HYROXing. That's the other aspect of it is I can't be a 260-pound HYROXer. My joints won't allow it. I'm probably not going to be as good as I want. If I have a goal 3 to 5 years, I have to change something that I haven't changed in 20 years, right? She's never competed in powerlifting at a high level. She's done some local meets and all that. She's had success. These are great. Okay. But when I went from my first high school nationals to teen nationals within that first year, it was substantially different. It wasn't like a blow away win that I had at nationals. Okay. I won by a good margin, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. She's going to be trying to compete with the top women in the country. She's winning these competitions now. And this isn't any dig on what she does or what anyone does when they first start off. You have early success, you think it's just going to continue. And the reality is it's not. Like we have Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian of all time. Yeah, we see all of his successes. You don't think he failed? You don't think some guy who didn't deserve to beat him at some point in time and he used that as fuel? For these athletes that I train, they're going to fail, right? And by all means, when we went to her previous meet, she failed, but she still won. She didn't get all of her attempts, and she was in her head about it. I said, good, you need this. And she looks at me like I'm the jerk saying, good, that you failed at all this stuff. I'm like, no, you're learning more about yourself now than you would if you would have gotten all these attempts. Because then you'd be so high, like, oh, I got this and got this. And then you get to your next one, and then life kicks you in the teeth, and now you're really depressed. 200%. And
Yeah.
with her body changing and doing all these things, it's like, look, you can have success with maybe not necessarily how you want to look, right? Like, this is very stereotypical, say, so I'm not going to sit here and say that she feels this way, but she wants a certain size waist and certain size look on her legs and her stomach to look a certain way. She can very well do that, right? And still be strong and be a national qualifier. But you know what it's going to take? It's going to take a lot more discipline. If you want to look like $1,000,000 and train like $1,000,000, those two things have to have a lot of deposits going into them. And you can't short circuit one of them. They have to be a very delicate balance. And it's also surrounding yourself with people who understand or are supportive of it, right? Because she's around me a lot, I'm very supportive and I understand. But if she has outside influencers in her life who don't understand it, that's what's tough. And most of the time, it's our parents. For me, I could talk to my mom about powerlifting. I've been doing powerlifting for 20 years. My mom still may not understand what powerlifting is. She's been to multiple meets, congratulated me multiple times, is very impressed with me. Like I'm her little super strong man of a son, right?
My little sweet John.
Exactly. But she doesn't know, right? Like
Yeah.
parents are just different sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's what's tough. And then also friends. Friends are also tough too. Surrounding yourself with friends who understand. And if even if they don't understand, if they're just supportive, they can very much look at her and say, why are you doing this? That's not what something we should be doing or whatever. We're different wavelengths. That's why my friends growing up, they smoked and drank at a young age.
I didn't know you had friends.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Right. Small circle, right? Small but loyal circle. But for me, I never smoked, never drank, never have. The reason is because I just knew that wasn't the right thing to do. Smoking and drinking at the age of 13, 14, whatever. Like, that's not legal.
So
you
just-
don't break the law.
Mm.
Instead, I just listened to death metal and painted my nails and all that stuff. But I was still athletic. Like I still did sports. I still had some structure in my life. My parents still supported me and doing all the things. So I just never did it. And then as I got older, I realized that like don't smoke and I don't drink, but I take care of the kids who do. And when I got to college, I made sure everyone got home safely. And then as I got older in life, I realized, wow, my addictive personality, if I were to ever start smoking or start drinking, it might go down a rabbit hole real quick. Because like I said, I got addicted to strength training. And that took me very, very far in life,
Mhm.
But I think we all understand that like there's a very, very fine line between having smoking and drinking consume your life and you have to live based off of how you feel because of those things. I mean, I can't be a
In forward
36-year-old
motion.
business owner who has to train clients at 5 a.m. and staying out until 1, 2 a.m. just because it looks cool on Instagram.
You
Like
can't-
that lifestyle has to change.
You can't soar with the eagles if you're
Right.
going to hoot with the owls.
Either way, right? It's like, look, you smoking, drinking, doing these things, that's fine. Have at it. That's not my lifestyle. Not that you can't be acquaintances or hang out or do things, but if you're saying, hey, come hang out with me and, let's have a drink, let's have a party and all that stuff, like, okay, cool. I'll stay till probably about 9, 10 p.m. Then I'm going home because I got to get up and I got to work out tomorrow because other things are more important to me, right? Other things are more important than sometimes just a longer social hour or something along those lines, right? It's just a different responsibility. And I think sometimes that just falls through the cracks with certain individuals and they find themselves in certain situations. That's another part of failing. You have to maybe stay out on a Sunday night one time and then coach somebody at 5 a.m. on a Monday morning. And then you remember how you feel all day Monday and you don't recover till Wednesday. And you know what happens? You're not going to do that again next Sunday. If you do, that's making the same mistake, right? But even if you did, hopefully that's not a routine. Because if you truly had ambitions and goals, hopefully staying out late on a Sunday night and then kicking off your week and dragging until Wednesday, it's not part of it.
What's your motto that you would teach your kids? Do you have one motto or do you have a bunch of Johnisms?
Oh, it's tough. I have work hard, lift well tattooed on my arms.
Yeah.
Okay, so like anyone who's listening to this, I have work hard on my right arm and lift well tattooed on my left arm. I was young, dumb, and 18 at once. I got these right as I moved to Texas. Was it a pull from the hip type moment? Absolutely. I would love to get them removed, but then, there's that,
Have that reminder.
just like the scars on my bicep, just like the scar on my back, these tattoos just remind me of a certain point in my life where if you go back to 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old John, there's no way that if you were to tell him you're not going to make it in the NFL, that he would say, you're right.
Yeah.
But long story short, he ended up being right. And no, it wasn't necessarily my own failure, just things didn't work out like that. So as far as any sayings, it's just all the stuff that we talked about today, learning how to fail and continue to move on to it. Finding adversities and pushing through to it. Learn how to train your life, not work out your life. I try not to do bumper sticker stuff. I really don't, because I think there are a lot of bumper sticker people out there on social media. They talk the talk, but I don't think they walk the walk. And when you're going through my introductory, I'm sitting here and just cringing. None of this is impressive to me, but it might be to some people.
You impressed me because I didn't know half that stuff
And I
because we
understand
don't
that.
talk about
And
it.
I understand that. And some of the stuff that I said today might be impressive to people. And if they're listening, hey, I appreciate you guys listening. In my head, I'm a nobody. I really am. I wake up every day. I pay whatever my taxes are. I pay whatever my gas bill is going to be. I go to work. I try to pour into people. And sometimes, a lot of the times I fall short. With how I talk to people and how I interact, it doesn't always come across as a very loving thing towards certain individuals. But at the same point in time, if you were to call me up tomorrow, Aubrey, on your way home, and you were to say, hey, look, I'm really stuck up here, I got nowhere to go, I'd probably get in the car and come help you. I don't necessarily wear my heart on my sleeve, but it's in there somewhere. I try to stay out of the spotlight for a lot of what we do, as far as owning a gym and living a pretty simple life. I'm very proud of my wife and what she's done and what you guys are doing with AOA. I really am. I want her to be successful in her own way. I want you guys to fail every time you have a podcast and learn from it. Like, I don't want the podcast to fail, but I want every time you interview someone to have you ladies learn one way or another and create different ideas because you've learned. I think that's so important, is people are afraid of failure, and you can't be afraid of failure. You can be afraid of failing at the same thing multiple times. Just stay on the righteous path, whether you know right, wrong, or indifferent. You got to have a good foundation of faith. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that's the other part. And that gray area for me is asking for help.
At the end of every episode, we love to ask this question, so you don't get any special treatment from it. What are you currently going all in on?
It's HYROX. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's very similar in my mind to what a powerlifting is. It's always the same. You can always just train and master these movements. I've lost about 25 pounds. I'm still on that losing weight thing, but I can't just do it in a overnight fashion. I'm aware of that, which is what's so challenging, but what's also cool for me as well. So I'm all in on a HYROX, and I'm all in on just trying to be a better husband. As we enter into our 7th year as a couple now, married. So working at HYROX and continuing to build our business and being a better husband and provider for Amanda, those are the two biggest things for me. Appreciate you ladies having me on here. I learned a lot today about what you ladies do and how you approach things in a very professional way. So I'm very fortunate to be a part of something like this, and I just hope anyone who's listening to this can continue to learn and fail in upward direction.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the All in Wellness Approach. If the show resonates with you, please rate, review, and subscribe. It helps us reach more people who are ready to live all in. Join the collective on Instagram at AWA Podcast. That's at AIWA Podcast for tools, insights, and inspiration, and catch every full episode on YouTube. Your support fuels this mission and keeps the collective moving all in. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended as medical, psychological, or professional advice. Always consult your doctor before changing your lifestyle.